Hi, I'm Kat Edel from the Dyscalculia Network, and today I'm really excited to welcome Peter Cherry to chat with me about dyscalculia and maths difficulties and maths anxiety, which is a topic that he feels very strongly about. And we really want to share the message of how maths anxiety and maths difficulties can impact people's lives. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Kat. Hi, Kat. Yeah, thanks very much for inviting me.
It's great to have you. So the first question I have for you is, what are your first memories of maths learning?
Right, well, I think like a lot of people, my sort of earliest memories are a little bit hazy, but just in the background of this, for this interview, I've also spoken to my parents and people who remember me from that age, so I've been able to piece together a few things. What I can say is I remember I just never particularly liked maths at all, like never really liked it. And I think I probably used to avoid, I was no probably about it, I used to avoid doing it as much as possible because I didn't like it as much. And in the reverse, I mean, I'm lucky to have quite strong literacy skills. So I've always enjoyed reading. I've always enjoyed writing, and I was very imaginative as a child. Like I remember inventing games about like a magic washing machine, for example. And so like in contrast, maths to me always felt quite dry and yeah, a little bit less fun, shall we say. But what my parents and what other people remember from me at that age is that I struggled a bit more. So I definitely struggle with writing numbers, for example, which is interesting because I never had that problem with letters. Or with words. It's something that I think quite familiar with dyslexics having issues with, but I definitely have problems forming letters, forming numbers. So yeah, so those are some of my early memories.
Oh, that's interesting. When you're at school, is there anything that helped you feel better about maths generally, or did it always feel really hard?
To be honest, my memories when I was at that sort of age, so kind of pre-secondary school, I just sort of remember maths as something that had to be done, and I just would try and avoid doing it as much as possible because I just didn't enjoy it and I found it difficult. And I think because I mean, one thing related to this is I remember as I said, I was strong in literacy, and I remember being praised quite a lot by teachers for like, oh, you did this well, whatever. Whereas maths, I didn't really have that kind of encouragement. So I think that's probably something that I probably suffered from. And I think because I was fortunate to have strong literacy skills, I noticed the difference. So I think positive encouragement is something I didn't really have. But to be honest, secondary school, and I'm sure we'll go on to talk about this, sure, secondary school is really where most of the kind of maths anxiety I have really came from. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Have you been diagnosed with having a maths difficulty or dyscalculia? And what age were you diagnosed?
Yeah, so when I was at the final year of primary school, actually, so just before going into year 7, so that is 10, isn't it? It's around 10, 11, yeah. I was actually diagnosed with dyscalculia and and dyspraxia as well. And now I don't really remember too much about what was really happening at that time, but clearly there was something that teachers were worried about. I know that my mum is actually a primary school teacher, so she also picked up, I think, on some of that. And yeah, and I was sent to an educational psychologist who did a number of different tests with me, and yeah, I came out diagnosed with dyscalculia and dyspraxia. And I remember at the time, even my mum, as a primary school teacher, wasn't entirely sure what dyscalculia was. So yeah, it's I think I would guess that actually I'm probably amongst some of the first to really even have this diagnosed, actually. So yeah.
Yes, in my experience, most probably. As a teenager, young adult, you mentioned that's when you felt like the anxiety really set in. Was that to do with exam situations, or was that to do with being in lessons?
Both, really. I think yeah, I mean, I should just sort of say, just to kind of put a bit of context to this. So I was diagnosed with dyscalculia at the end of my primary school years, and the term then was statemented, which I'm told is not really the term anymore, but I was given a statement for dyscalculia, and part of that, I had a lesson, a kind of a lesson plan, education plan set up.
Yeah.
And I used to have my maths in the special educational needs area of my school, and that I really benefited from, I have to say. And the teachers I had were really supportive, really helpful. But what I found more was in the culture of that school, which is where some of the anxieties came from, because I was in the top set for English, and then I was having to go to the special needs area to do my maths. You know, at that age, it was actually, I mean, it was awful, because people obviously noticed, people realized, you know, there was gossip, there was whispering, yeah, and it just, I really felt within the kind of environment of the SEN centre, I have to say, it was okay, and the teachers were really helpful. But outside of that, it was, yeah, it was quite difficult. And I would add something else here, which I've really been thinking about since this interview, which is, so I went to a comprehensive school, but it was an all boys school. Which I have to say I'm kind of against same-sex schools now as a result. But there was a real culture around the idea that maths was a kind of coded masculine, and like English was therefore like a feminine subject, which is obviously rubbish. But at the time, I remember even an IT teacher at our school saying, you know, oh, as your boys, you'll be better at the maths parts, when we were learning about Excel. And it had a huge impact on me, because I sort of felt the school kind of encouraged this idea of maths as the subject which, as a boy and as boys, you should be good at, whereas English, you know, is not really for you. And yeah, and I think all of that really led to me having like real anxieties about maths. It led me really thinking about where I kind of, yeah, where I fit in, and it was awful, really was awful. And you brought all that baggage, and I still feel some of that shame, you know. It sounds a bit ridiculous to say, but I still really feel that kind of walk from the English room to the SEN centre in maths. I still feel it now when I sort of sit down and do maths. It was awful, and just the kind of feelings of what people were saying, and like the expectations of teachers as well. It was horrible.
Thank you for sharing with that. I think it's really important that teachers hear some of the impacts that this can have on children's mental health when they're suffering with anxiety, and in any subject, not just maths, you know, if it was reversed. Also, I think you make a really important point about you know, gender issues, and the importance of, you know, being neutral about what topics belong to which gender, because it's not at all relevant. No. And everybody should be given equal opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. But yeah.
Thank you for sharing your views with us. We'll chat again in part 2 soon. Thank you very much, Peter.
Yes, okay, thanks.